I hope you enjoy the Paris Olympics as much as I do. I'm still planning to tune into the rest of the game. Don't forget, there's Paralympics starting this week. In the meantime, I want to present you a little deep dive into the Paris 2024 visual symphony, the branding of Olympics. What if I tell you that there's a single visual element that could represent the entire game of 2024? What would that be? The purple stadium, the iconic medal, and everything around this game is so different and it so stands out from our generation's memory. What is that visual elements that can represent this entire game? This is Typography, the silent voice of society. It's a video series about how letters shape our culture and created by Typogram. So let's dive in. First, we're going to dive into icon introspection. The core of Paris Olympic, of course, is this iconic logo that's both a woman's face and at the same time is also the flame of the Olympics. Here's a quote from Royalty Eco Branding, the design studio behind the work of Paris branding. The emblem carries several symbols, the face of a woman as an allegory of freedom, the Olympic flame as a symbol of progress for all, and the gold representing human excellence. I really like the duality of the logo. If you get rid of the lip, it looks more like the Olympic flame. But once you add the lip, it's so obviously this is a woman. And not only that, for some reason, this is obviously to me that it's a French woman. So I think this idea comes from a lot of exploration. It doesn't come from just one spark of idea. It certainly is really hard to articulate to AI. In the last video, I showed how to use AI to create a perfectly rounded icon of a dragon, but it doesn't really work well if I want an icon that's both a flame and also a woman. This has to be handcrafted and it has to be rooted from a lot of exploration. And maybe from one of the exploration, the original idea was to draw a flame, and suddenly an idea emerged from that. Adding this lip is equal to, there's a Chinese old saying where you paint the eye of the dragon comes alive. I really think this lip is that the eye of the dragon. Hey, just want to add a quick note. The Bezier curve editing action, swapping shape with icon, generating new icon using artificial intelligence, all those actions were done in an app called Typogram, which is my own app. Please visit typogram.co for more information if you are interested. Speaking of not generated by AI and handcrafted, there's no better evidence than taking a close look on the craftsmanship of the Bezier curve of the icon. Let's go. Opening up this icon with the Bezier curve editor in Typogram, we can see everything was up to code and done perfectly. There is a concept in Bezier curve editing that's called the extrema. Extrema means it's either the minimal x or minimal y or maximal x or maximal y. So dissecting the curvatures and trying to find the highest point, the lowest point, the far left point, and the far right point. And using those points to add on-point controls instead of in between. This is one of the most important lessons for typeface designers and icon designers, to put your anchor points on extrema. This is like what Steve Jobs was talking about the back of the cabinets. Even at places you don't see, there are craftsmanship went into it to ensure the quality. Now moving on to logo landscape, how do we assemble the brand identity? Now with the core idea already in place, how do we go about and putting out the entire logo, which is still part of the brand identity, not the whole, but a very important part. So looking at the logo holistically, it has a woman's face and the word mark and the Olympic symbol, the 5 circles. There's not a lot to talk about the Olympic circles. It's not something that Paris or any other game can just change it all of a sudden. The symbol of Olympics, the 5 circles, have evolved over the past 100 years, but only for 5 times. We will talk about that a little bit later. The point is that this is not something Paris is empowered to change unless there's a strong reason to. And once it changes, the next Olympic would most likely to inherit it. It's not something you can change every 4 years. Let's take a closer look at the Wordmark. Remember that in the beginning, I teased that there is a visual element that can represent the Paris 2024. What is that visual elements? Seeing this Wordmark, you may get a hint. The visual element that I was speaking of is curves. You see that this is a normal typeface almost, except everything is a little bit curved up. Ball of the P connect to the stem. It was a 90-degree angle. Instead, it was curved, sloped up, and then joined with the main stem of the P. And similar with the A with the right side of the stem, similar with the R, and similar with the 4. If we zoom all the way in, we can see that how the dot of the I is separated from the stem of the eye. The gap, the chasm, the gutter is also of curve. It wasn't a straight line, even though the dot of the eye is largely a square. I think the idea of it is really interesting. It really calls back to the icon being a circle. Circle is the most perfect form of curves. But here, after I take a closer look, just like how we take a close look at the icon, I couldn't help but feel this a little bit imperfect. Looking at the construction of the letters, one thing you see missing is using extrema, like what we see in the icon. In the icon, everything was put in the extrema, the top, the left, the right, and the curve was constructed in a way that most typeface designer would approve. But here, it looks almost random. Even though when we look at close lens, there are imperfections, but backing it up, I think it still presents a very strong concept, which is the curvatures that calls back to the icon of the woman's face. The number 0 here is a perfect circle, which presents the next great idea. I think the next great moment of this brand design is to using that icon of the woman's face to replace the number 0. The logo itself, the form was very square-ish. We mostly see them in a square when it was put in the front and center. But a lot of times when design stadiums, design equipment, you can't really put your logo in that square form factor. And we do need a long, wide, rectangular shape. Here, we still want to incorporate the icon, and we still want to say Paris 2024, but we can't afford to show them in the original form. So this really solves that problem perfectly, having the 5 circle symbol of Olympics on the left, and then Paris 2024, except the number 0 in 2024 was replaced by the icon. I think that's a really perfect execution. You can see the branding in almost every single shot of the game. Be it gymnastics, be it swimming, there is some boards that we can put the logo onto, even though it wasn't the original form. That really alluded to the next part of our talk, which is number 3, Olympic Paranoma, the branding in the big picture. How do we make a strong brand image while the most of the stadium would be devoid of the logo mark? How do we do that? In the end of the project for the branding studio, they deliver a brand guidelines, and that's where the actual work actually began. The Paris Olympic Games then have to think about how do we apply the branding material in every single touch point with the audience. That's a really interesting case study as well, because I don't think there's bigger brand application than a literal stadium that can host 10,000 people. How do I brand the stadium? The stadium doesn't come with a brand. The stadium holds all kinds of events and it's a vessel. Sure, we can print the logo everywhere we want. We can even print the logo onto the grass itself, but oftentimes that's not a strong impression. However, this Paris game gave me a strong branded impression. The first moment I lay eyes on the stadium, it strikes me the track and field is purple. It's actually made of this specialized material, and the color is not just for the track and field. As soon as I start watching the game, I noticed that all the tennis players in their breaks, they wipe their sweat off with this purple towel. The table tennis table, the equipment itself, has the purple outline that looks really unique. As big as a stadium with a track field that's purple, to the small item, the little swag that you get as an athlete, they both have this branded color, purple. That's a really great usage of the brand. The conversation about Paris Olympic Games doesn't end here. If we go to the Olympic website and visit the Paris section, we quickly realize that there's an umbrella brand above Paris game. And that is true for every other Olympics game. Same for LA. They will have their own branding, but above them, there is an umbrella brand that is Olympic. They have their own brand guidelines and with their own brand typefaces. In fact, when you go to the main page, it uses Olympic serif and Olympic sans. But when you go to the Paris section, it's used this unique Paris 2024 typeface that really resembles the typeface in the logo. It has this roundedness to it that's really unique, but a much bolder version. It's similar to a company with the mother brand, and they have multiple lines of product, and each of the product have their own branding. Olympics is kind of like that, but a mega version of that, which is quite interesting for branding studies. I noticed that the Olympic serif on the main website was actually misused. It must have a bold version that was designed by the typeface designer, but it wasn't properly embedded on the website. And what we see here is actually a full bold version of the regular weight. I can quickly prove that by turn the CSS on and off and inspect the style sheets. We notice that there's no bold version of the Olympic serif embedded on this page. That's a really good example of how much work is there to do properly as brand executioners. On this page in particular, we can also see the history of the Olympic reigns. It has actually gone through 5 different iterations. There's total 6 versions. The latest change actually happened pretty recently. The previous version, the last Olympic to use that symbol, was in Beijing Olympics in 2008, where the ring connect to each other. There's a little gap to suggest the spatial relationship between them. And the latest version get rid of that. Ring was just tightly touch each other and using the color overlay to signal the spatial relationship between them. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to the brand studio who did this work. It's such a unique position to be in. That work must be really fulfilling. To be honest, I'm quite envious of your position. If possible, I want to hear more about the behinds of the branding. I think all the branding community would benefit from that. That concludes our video. Thank you so much for tuning in.